Hello, and we're recording. Hello, everyone. My name's Daryl. I'm sure you know me very well already. This is Dan, who is a lovely
Hello?
teacher. Your lovely teacher, very likely, if you're at our school. Today, we're going to talk about recording. We're going to do a mini series on how to record at home. We've got loads of questions. We weren't expecting this many questions or people excited about recording as much. We thought this would be a really niche Q&A that we would do as a one-off, and that only Dan and I would actually be interested in doing it. We thought this would be fun because we both have done a fair bit of recording, and we sent out a bunch of questions to lovely students, and we got a flood of responses back. We were expecting like one person to ask a few nerdy questions, and we got like 10 people or more ask us some really nerdy questions, which we love. You're in a safe place with some super recording nerds. So first up, I thought it'd be interesting to share that a lot of you might not know, but Dan has a relatively, I think, interesting recording history uh, for his kind of musical background and his degree at university. I don't know if you want to talk about that, Dan. What you did for studying.
Sure, or their lack of at university. So yeah, I studied music production at university, and it was a whole lot of fun. We did a mixture of things from recording to writing music for film and games. To there was a business thing we did that was pretty awful, I'll admit. But the recording part was really fun, and we got to record the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra once, which was, I have to say, a lot of fun. And so, yeah, a lot of experience with kind of mic placements and stuff, and what to record, what to do. But I'll admit that was about 5 years ago. And weirdly enough, after university, a lot of it was trial and error for me. So a lot of it was taking some of the core principles that I'd learned, but going through it, basically messing around with stuff and going, what does this do? What does this do? And there's things that I wish I knew, where I think we can give some tips on, and things that I still don't really know how to do to this day, which I go, that'd be kind of cool to learn. But I think we can cover a lot of really good stuff today.
Yeah, cool. And that's great because your experience of it is very different to mine. But you said you learned from trial and error. Like I learned entirely from trial and error. So uh, I downloaded a software when I was like 15 or 16, and I played with it. Didn't know how to use it. I had no idea what I was doing. And then I got into a band where some guys kind of showed me what I was doing. And a few years later, I ended up I was saying a few minutes ago before we started the recording, hilariously looking back, but I ended up being the sound engineer in a music studio. Frankly, I still don't know what half the things I were doing were actually called, but we made some pretty decent sounding tracks, I thought, in the end, and I recorded with bands and stuff too. So I'm interested to pick Dan's brain because he will have a more scientific approach than I would. Um, and yeah, hopefully we'll answer the questions again. We're going to go through today. We're going to do some stuff on absolute beginner stuff like what to buy for recording, through to some more niche questions, and we're going to layer that in a little bit. So hopefully there should be something here for everyone, whether you've been recording quite a bit already or whether you haven't done any recording. And this whole thing came about because our rock band at the moment, our lovely rock band, have been, instead of performing on stages this year, which is less possible in 2020/2021, the year of the pandemic, they've been recording songs instead and learning to record at home. So we ended up doing a lot of material for them, and actually we're going to release it to the rest of you students too, the kind of prep material for it, so you can understand how to record. And so if there's gaps from today that you don't necessarily understand, you'll be able to go look at that material. And yeah, like we end up doing stuff for them, and then we thought, okay, we need to do a Q&A for some of the questions that are coming up. Let's open that up to everyone. And we got some questions. Did we get some questions? So we're going to jump in and start answering those questions, and hopefully you'll enjoy this and you'll get something useful from it. So the first question that we really got from multiple people was just getting started. Like, what do you do to get started with recording? What do you need to buy? Do you need to buy anything? And yeah, so what do you need to do to get started with recording? What do you think, Dan?
I would say the first thing to get started with recording actually comes before you buy a single thing, and that is just practicing with a metronome. So I think my biggest problem that I had when recording, even after I had a bunch of stuff, like I bought like a £400 piece of software, I bought like a £100 thing to plug my guitar into, I bought a whole bunch of other things like software, but I couldn't actually make anything sound good in it because I couldn't play in time to a metronome. And so for me, actually, what to do came before that. But really, the kind of how to get started with it, I would recommend download some free software. It's really good. There's a bunch. I know Rock Band are using one called Audacity, which seems to be going really well. There's a whole bunch of other ones. I think I looked. There's loads. I mean, you could literally Google the terms free DAWs, like DAWs, like literally DAW. Just Google that and then kind of browse through. A lot of them you'll come across like sales pages on their websites being like, it does this and ours is better like this. I mean, really, they all do the same damn thing, which is you download it and it can record stuff into it. Like, there's not really anything special about each one of them. And so I would say if you're unsure where to start, that would be a really good point, is just do that search term, maybe do a bit of reading, find something free that works, either if you're using a Mac or if you're using a PC, and just tinker with it a little bit. Okay, tinker with it a little bit. And I know we're going to go through some other things today, Daryl, with like how to use the softwares and stuff, I think. So that will help. But that's my biggest piece of probably advice for like recording things on a computer, is just find one for free, tinker with it a little bit.
Yeah, and I think the one we use with Rock Band is Audacity, and the videos you have are like you went and made. They're using Audacity, right? They show you.
They're using Audacity, yeah.
Cool. So if you want a bit of a guide along with that, you can use Audacity. A good one on Mac is, because I'm a Mac fanboy after many years of using PC, is GarageBand. It kind of comes with a free one. And then I think we also found Pro Tools, you said, has a free version too.
Yeah, there's Pro Tools. I think it's Pro Tools First, which is, like, for people who don't know watching this, Pro Tools is the industry standard for like for basically when people record tracks that sell for like millions on the radio, and when people do like editing for film scores and stuff, a lot of them use Pro Tools. And so you can get it really expensive or you can get it for free.
Yeah, it's like a limited version.
Yeah,
cool. So I think that's good. I don't really have anything to add to that. I think it's fine. Yeah. In terms of getting started, if I think about what to record, I would just try and record covers, like record parts that you're already doing. So rather than thinking you have to record a whole song, once you get into something, you're figuring out the software, you just take things you can already play and you record parts of songs. And you think of it like, I'll do this thing where I will, I try and do this daily, but I'll load up my my DAW, my digital audio workstation. So if you hear the term DAW, DAW, that's what that stands for. It's just the program I'm using. And I'll try and record something new every day for like 2 to 5 minutes, using it, and then I'll save it with the date. So I have all these files saved of song ideas that are just kind of stuck in there. But the first kind of hurdle to overcome is getting used to being in this thing, and then just like recording things you can already play, getting used to playing in time, having things set up so that you can use them, stuff like that. So that's what I would say. What to buy though? Okay, so you can download the digital audio workstation and still not quite be ready to use it yet, because this is a question that came up loads, is like, how do I get my guitar in there into the computer? Yes. I must get the sound in there. and or singing, I guess, is the other thing, like voice and singing. So if you're unaware of how that works, you need something to go from a guitar lead that you would normally put into an amp. You need some way of getting that connector into your computer. And the way you do that is a thing called an interface. And they are infinite in price ranges. You can have ones, I'm pretty sure we saw ones for under 20 quid when I was looking a while ago.
We did.
And
Not very good.
You could easily spend like 2 or 3 grand on really fancy ones with many inputs and really good sound. So the price range is very wide. We stuck some recommended ones that we knew were pretty good because we did some research in the doc that we're going to give you guys too. So you can see that. I think it ended up being around £70 or £80, something like that.
Yeah, I think that was the one that we figured out was like a really good start one.
Yeah, and then in terms of microphone, that was another question that came up, was like, what microphone should I get? And that's, you can use a microphone if you want to sing into it, or if you want to record your amp sound, you would use a microphone to do that. Then we found some USB mics that could work too, so you could send the USB mic directly into your computer, which is another option. There is a third option where you get a microphone which goes into your interface and then into your computer. Now we've ended up buying 2 separate items there. That's what I do. That's what I'm doing today. You can't, if I turn, you can see I have my microphone there. I wouldn't describe that as a getting started way of doing things at all. I would say that's a little bit more advanced. But if you're just getting started in your guitar, which is, let's face it, we're a guitar school, so I'm going to focus on that, the interface would be the best way to go. And then you just plug your guitar lead in and you do the processing of like turning it into a good amp sound or whatever afterwards. Do you have anything to add on that, Dan?
I guess it's one thing that comes to memory. I think the box that we told people to buy,
yeah,
I'm pretty sure as a bonus it came with like a free digital audio workstation, like as a download as well, I think, from memory. But yeah, really, I would just say, yeah, that's pretty much the biggest part, is getting that box for guitar. And yeah.
And then, so we had questions up there. The world's changed a bit since, which feels like a very old thing to say.
Bunch of 20-year-olds being like, the world has changed.
Yeah, the world has changed. No, but it really has, since I did lots of recording. Like, I used to laugh a lot at kind of post-processing. Post-processing is where I kind of record my guitar sounding clean and then turn amps on afterwards. And they were okay 10 years ago, but most of them, I could always tell, like, if I hadn't have done an amp record. Like, and the records that we did, I had 2 bands called This Blank Page and Neon Nurse. The records that we did where they were with post-processings, where the amps were done afterwards, always sounded really different to when we'd mic'd up an amp, which taking a microphone to them. But nowadays, some of the things that come out, I can't tell. Like, I really can't tell some of the things that are coming out. The technology has moved on massively. So, and I'm saying that because you might have heard, oh, it's better to mic up an amp or something. And it's like, yeah, that was true not very long ago. And now I just don't know anymore. It's kind of whatever you fancy. And I still kind of like the idea of miking up an amp, although I don't do it anymore because I actually have a processor now. So I don't know, it's all toys and all fun and games. But I think to begin with, using a processor or like plugging your guitar straight in and doing it that way is a decent way to go. All right, cool. So we've talked about digital audio workstations. We talked a little bit about microphones. If you want to do a separate microphone interface thing, like you want a microphone like this one here, Audio Technica do very cheap, very good microphones. And cheap, I mean, you can get something really good for under £200, which in terms of microphone land is really good. You can get something much cheaper if you're just in the getting started realm. Like you can get something for under 100 quid or around 100 quid for a decent USB microphone. Really is horse for courses. You can spend, just to put this in perspective, like some of the microphones they'll have in studios, they'll spend £6,000 on doing them. So when I'm saying like a really good mic for under £200, I get excited about that still to this day, because I used to end up recording with these expensive mics. Okay, so something that came up a lot, Dan, is sorry, they didn't say anything about Instagram or YouTube, but I suggested maybe that might have happened. So I think Maria said something about it. Liam did too. And I know we've got a few students who want to kind of record and then stick stuff on YouTube. So how would you go about recording a video and then getting good audio from that?
Oh man, so I can talk you the way I used to do it. I don't really have a concrete answer for this because I never really did it that much. But the way I used to do it was I would, with my kind of digital like the DAW that I had, I would record obviously my guitar, but at the very same time I would have my like camera on my computer. So because I use a Mac, there's this thing called Photo Booth on a Mac that you could just record videos. So I would record like the video of me playing the song while I literally record the song part into the DAW. And then what I used to do is I would drag the video file into the software. And essentially I would look at like what's called the waveform. So when you record audio, for those who don't know, what it does, it looks like a literal wave. And then I would just make them line up. that's literally, I'd make them line up. I'd then mute the video's audio and leave my recorded audio in place. I have no idea if that's the good way of doing it, if it's the easy way, the fastest way, or whatever. It's how I did it. I don't know if you have anything that you do, Daryl, differently, because you do more of this than I do.
I mean, what you said is pretty much it. So, I don't think there's a better answer. Like I've done this a lot. So, you're normally recording on two separate devices because you want good audio because you're a musician, and you want good video because the medium is video. So a lot of the times when I'm on this, I've been recording on my phone for the video, or even on camera in here today. But most of the time, the audio and the video are coming from two separate things. With the exception of, because I'm really lazy, my YouTube videos, I don't really do that. I just let the sound come through. I just try and get a good tone on my guitar and go for it. But that's because I'm trying to save some time with doing that. But if I'm doing a YouTube, like there's one video I did where I released a solo that I played, or there's some really old videos that I can't remember whether I have them set to public or not. I'll go back and reset them to public, but they're ones of me singing from like 6 years ago where I was just singing direct to microphone. And with an acoustic guitar, and I kind of have everything mic'd up. And so what's happening there is the same thing. You see lots of guitarists on YouTube do this too, is you can actually see the computer behind them with their program running, recording. Like you can see the recording happening behind them, and the camera is facing them with the screen is on camera. And then at the end, what they're going to do is they'll end the session, finish the camera, then they'll go into the video editor once they've exported the audio from their audio program, then drag the audio into the video editor and sync the two up using the waveforms that Dan said. So one thing that can help when doing that is if you've ever lived, I guess would be the appropriate thing. If you've ever seen someone do like a clap at the beginning of a recording, which I'm not going to do now because I value your ears, or if it's just straight guitar in, obviously a clap's not going to do anything, but you can do like a loud muted strum, The reason they do that is because it makes a burst in the waveform. Like that is a strong point. And on both waveforms, you should see it. You should see it on the camera where it is on the audio waveform, which is a visual representation of the audio. And you should see it on the audio on your computer. And then you line those up visually. And Bob's your uncle. It all goes well. Now, I think that's much easier to do if you're editing the video on a computer. Nowadays, sometimes you're editing videos on your phone. I tried to do this recently with something on my phone. It was just fiddly. And that's really fiddly. And I'm someone who's done this tons of times before. And I was just, I got it, but it took me like half an hour to get the things to line up because you're like trying to do it with fingers. So if you've never done it before, I would try and do it on your computer with whatever editing software is on your computer. So if you're a Mac, you can just do it in iMovie. If you're on PC, I don't know anymore. I have no idea.
There's something on Windows that does that. I think it's Windows Movie Maker, or maybe it's. I'm thinking years back. I mean, I don't know.
I haven't had a PC in 10 years, so I don't know.
There'll be something though. There'll be something.
But whatever the video editing software you'd use is, and you can do it on your phone. You just want to make sure you get those to line up, and I just find it fiddlier. But there's probably some 10-year-old on Instagram on YouTube who's made a great walkthrough tutorial on how to do it. So yeah,
it's very true. YouTube is probably one of the best places for figuring out how to do some of the stuff.
Yes. So that's Instagram, YouTube video sync. Next question is I thought this was great. This was from Blair. And I think we kind of covered a lot of his other questions. And if we haven't covered your questions, by the way, we're going to do probably a little series of these, maybe 2 or 3 of them. So don't worry if we haven't kind of covered something that you sent in yet. We'll do it over the next few weeks. But the next question is top 5 tips I wish I knew when first recording on a computer. On the spot, Daniel, what?
Yeah, I was thinking about this before we hit record. I was like, oh, what tips would I give? Because I'm trying to. It's been so long since I first hit that record button, ever. So I guess top 5 tips. First one, don't worry about it being perfect. Is probably the biggest thing that I wish I knew when I first started, because my whole world of recording something was, I'm recording it, so either I don't know, someone's going to hear it in the future, or maybe I put some old videos up on YouTube. If anyone wants to search for them, just I guess you can, if you dig hard enough on YouTube, you can find old videos of me with my dad's handheld camera on a stand in my bedroom with long hair, playing metal songs to a really cheap guitar pedal that sound awful. And that was me playing the song from start to finish, and there's probably multiple takes that went into that, because I was worried about things being perfect when really I should have been focusing on it from the point of view of just getting something recorded just for practice. And you can always you'll get better as you record more. But I think that's one really big tip, is not to worry about the perfectionism thing, which I know for me personally I've struggled a lot with my life, is perfectionism. So and I know probably a lot of people can relate to that as well. Other tips that I would have found useful. I don't know, man. I'll have a little think about it. Do you have anything?
All right, so maybe we're going to do a top 5 between us.
Yeah, I think we should.
Well, I'd agree with your first one. I think the habit of opening up the software is more important than getting things right. And that's but it is I find recording is probably the most triggering experience, or was, because it's kind of like the first time you hear your voice back. I don't know if you ever had that experience when you're a kid where you hear your voice back for the first time, you're like, I don't sound like that. It's not what people hear. People hear my voice like that. How does anyone like me? I had this really kind of big experience, and with guitar recording, it's not like that extreme, but you can sometimes not be far off. So getting used to the process of it is really helpful, and then just keeping going, because you get better. You get better the more you do it. And actually, what's funny is I haven't recorded in years, and you get worse the more you don't do it. You do especially the timing thing. So the more you record to a metronome, or to drum tracks, the better you get with your timing, and the better. And frankly, if there's two things to being a good guitar player, it's being in tune and on time. If you can do that, probably everything else will work it out. I know there's all sorts of other nuances that you go into with scales and phrasing and stuff, but in tune, on time, if you're not those, everything else falls apart. So I wish when I first started that I'd had someone just show me what the basics were in terms of like, oh, this is how you arm a track. And if you know what a track is, like, that's, you can have multiple tracks or multiple layers when you're recording, and they can all be separate. But I remember I would be in this recording software, and I just like, I didn't even know, I really, really wanted to record, but I just could not work out, for a start, how to get my sound into the computer. I was like trying to plug my guitar into these old PC holes for like the headphone port, be like, why is the sound not coming through? And then I didn't know how to kind of get the track to have the right sound. So there was this real like weird technical barrier, and I felt like I'd opened up some kind of NASA space software when I first looked at these things. So I wish I just had someone sit there and go like, okay, this is how you arm a track, this is how you get a metronome going, and then this is how you hit record. And so that's kind of what we've already done for you guys, so you can kind of go through that process and just see those, and you can still ask us questions about it. But yeah, 100%, I probably went into the program for 6 months or a year trying to get it to work before I could, and I'd see other people's recording and I just didn't really know how. And I think I was afraid to ask questions. I was a teenager, I didn't want to ask questions, I wanted to figure it all out myself.
Yeah, I'd echo that experience quite a lot. Even though I went to university, that helped quite a lot with the figuring out like the what's to do and like what buttons do and recording and things. But there was still loads of learning that I did outside of my own, where I think university gave me, like, weirdly enough, the basics, like just an entry point. But really beyond there, that was kind of it. So I guess it'd be a bit like if you, I don't know, went to a really kind of beginner course on like guitar somewhere, and you've got the basics down, but it's like, hey, what next? Like, where do I go from here? And so yeah, that was a big thing. I think probably the biggest like technical tip that was the most useful for me when like actually doing the recording was making sure that so if I can share real quickly like an example of the box things that you can get, like, this is like one of them. So when you plug your guitars in, so I can plug like my jack input, like the guitar lead, into here, this little button, this little dial will tell me like how much of the signal's coming through, how loud it is. My biggest problem was I could never make things sound good later on in the recording, which I know we're going to come to about like the editing process. Mm-hmm. And my biggest problem was that my signal just wasn't loud enough. So whenever I tried to do, there's this thing called a noise gate, where it's like an effect, a piece of like mini software within the DAW itself. It's not, you don't have to pay, well, you can pay extra for some of them, but there's always free ones that work really well. And its job is to cut out any noise below a certain volume. And the problem is, in that editing process, if you want to cut out like background noise, either you're recording vocals and you're getting noise from headphones, or you're just got like hiss on a guitar. Like if you're recording an amp, for example, and you're using lots of distortion, sometimes you'll get like lots of hiss come through. So having your guitar loud enough means that when you put that noise gate thing on, you don't lose pretty much a lot of your actual recording. So that was one of my biggest pet peeves, especially from doing lots of recording in college. And there's also a fine line with that, because you can make it too loud where you end up with what's called clipping, which is basically the computer has to artificially figure out what's going on, and it makes really horrible noises, like really horrible noises. So just finding that sweet spot was probably the most important tip that helped me with recording an actual guitar part or a vocal part or a bass part or whatever, because it made everything else after it, the editing process, about a million times easier.
That's a really good point. Yeah, you just brought back memories to me. So to piggyback onto that, number 4 then is noise was like the biggest issue I had. And I think this isn't going to be so much of a problem for you guys recording now. Like I was recording on just cobbled together crap is really what it was. Like a mixer here that I somehow found a way into the computer. It was like technology wasn't really that advanced by then to get cheap stuff when you're a kid. If I think if I'd have kind of had a bit more money to spend at that time or known what to get, it would have been easier. But I just ended up with so much noise on those tracks that it was like, oh, there's my guitar part, and it sounds like it's raining. And that was caused by me going, I had dodgy leads that weren't very good that were making extra noise. I think I had my jack input on my guitar was like dodgy and making weird sounds. So that wasn't in very good condition. The mixer I was going to was making loads of noise, and there was all this kind of old problems that I think wouldn't happen if you're going direct in now, but it could still happen if you have a dodgy guitar lead. So making sure you have a good quality lead or a new lead. You can get away with sometimes you can get away with a cheap new lead rather than an expensive high quality lead. But obviously you're going to have to replace leads every so often because they fray. But yeah, that'll stop noise from happening. And then making sure your guitar jack input is well maintained. And if you know how to do that, the kind of service side of things, it's like it's a soldering job. It's relatively easy. If you don't know how to do it, it's worth every year or so having your guitar serviced, which we don't do, but we do refer you to someone who does this for us. He does all our guitars too, a guy called Sam, who's really good. And if you want a service job on your guitar, you can have it done. But yeah, so I would just making sure your equipment's decent is good, because it can really be upsetting if you put in a great performance or like play something really cool and then you go, oh, the lead was, oh, that's really frustrating. And I've had that many times. So.
Yeah, I think that's like tip number 4. Tip 5 is a stupidly obvious one, but I feel like it should probably be said. It's kind of like in 2 parts. Number 1, just really double checking the guitar tuning. First of all, because there's nothing worse than, I don't know, playing a guitar part that uses, I don't know, strings 6, 5, 4, and 3, and then you have to go on to string 2, and then you realize right after like 2 minutes of recording, if you've got that far, that it's out of tune. that's never fun, because you can't. Well, I say you can't. You can fix tuning, but I mean, like, we should probably be tuning our guitars than letting computers do all the work. And so tuning is one. Another one for getting like just if you want to get a really good sound in recording, a lot of people think they're like, oh, like the amp, I changed the amp setting, it will improve the sound, or I changed this, or I changed that. A lot of it is learning how to get a really good tone out of your guitar. And one of those things is new strings. So if you haven't changed strings for a while, what's going to happen is old strings, they'll like, all the brightness comes out of them. They just become dull and faded and worn. And so you lose a lot of that, I guess, kind of like shimmer, you could call it, like shimmer, kind of brightness, sparkle, if you will. All right. That you could kind of get from a track that you just can't replace. People think, oh, well, I'll just record it in, then you can use a little like software called an equalizer where you can find a specific sound called like a frequency. So you know how when people get their ears tested, they like test you for like what frequencies you can hear using really, if you ever experienced this, it's like really horrible noises that get like played at you, and you're gonna say if you can hear them or not. It's like the ear version of an eye test, but it feels way worse. But people think you can just find the shimmer sound and like turn it up, and it's not the same. You can't. It's completely different. Like one sounds really natural and fluid, the other's very like artificial and horrible. So you can fake it, but it's worth taking the time to do those things before recording, and then it just makes, like I say, everything else, like after, it's like the domino effect. You get the first domino right, and then everything else falls into place. So, or like the maintenance stuff you talked about, Dara, is great. And anything else you can do to get that initial first few steps before you hit record.
All right. So I want to just make a really good point here that I know we said 5 things, and some of them you might go, oh, I've got to do all these things. You really don't have to. The most important thing of all is just to get started and have a go. If you want to have a go, it's I can't remember who the quote's from, but it's if the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, the second best time's now. And it really is the best time to just start is now. So I'm really conscious of the time because Dan has a class to teach in 8 minutes. And there's one question that I want to answer in particular, which is about recording parts. So one of the benefits of new recording, so onto a computer versus the recording done years ago, you just record one thing and you just record. It was on tape, you had to get it right, you did the whole song, and then that was it. So now you can record in parts. So you can record the intro, you can record the verse, you can record the chorus, all separately, which is great. And you can punch in and go, I'm going to record a bar. I have recorded a single note before, trying to get a record right. Obsessively, you go, screw up the note. So I'll go and I'll re-record that single note. So that's a real benefit to it. And you can punch in. So for some specific stuff, I'm going to let Dan kind of do any of that in Audacity, like demo stuff. Someone has a really specific question about how do you record this part, but that like a intro part or something. Well, there's a thing called markers that you can set up for your track, and you can mark out where the song is, and you can jump straight to that section and record directly from there. You don't have to wait from 0 to 30 seconds. You can jump in and record right from the 30-second mark. But a lot of questions came up from this because I think some people have recorded in the past where they recorded like linearly, they recorded the whole song in one go. And they said, should I record in parts? Should I not? How do you even plan that out? And my answer to that is kind of, I've always recorded in parts. And actually, I recently started recording more linearly and realized that I've been missing something for a long time. And what I mean is this: if you record, the nice thing about digital kind of audio workstations using on a computer, if you're recording a whole song or large sections of a song, say you did the intro, the verse, and the first chorus, you don't have to use that take. What I've started doing now is I'll record large sections of the song, maybe all the way up to the chorus, maybe the whole song. And instead of doing it once, I'll do that like 3 times or 4 times, and then go through and edit the best bits together afterwards. So you get the Franken take of the whole thing. The reason I like that is when I spent years doing section by section by section, making sure it's perfect. And it's so unnatural and frankly, slightly demoralizing to do the same 2-bar section and get it wrong again and again and again, that it's nice to go through and do whole sections and try and then take the best from those. I don't know if you have thoughts on that, Daniel. I don't know how.
Yeah, I think both worlds have something to offer. I do a similar thing. Like if I'm recording, I'll often do multiple takes of like lengthy bits as well. And then because what I think you get from that is, like, I think the value in that is you end up with the kind of a natural performance where maybe you played a certain part in a certain way and it just sounds really good. It just sounds really good. And sometimes you just can't get that from doing an isolated take because you needed everything that came before it as almost like an emotional performance at the same time. So you needed the context for like this part to make sense in the moment. But if you're recording in chunks, like you don't really get that. So you end up with this really pristine, technically correct recording, but it's lacking the feel, if you will, of what something else would. But I think there's also some value in learning how to do specific sections, because maybe, like you say, there's a bar that you want to recorrect, or a note. Like I've watched album documentaries before of bands making albums, and there's one where the guitar player literally recorded like one note at a time because the guitar like wouldn't stay perfectly in tune. So it was like a perfectionist issue again, but the guitar wouldn't stay perfectly in tune. So like, it's this note. Like, okay, go back, retune the guitar to the note, and then they're like, duh. I'm like, oh, that sounds so maddening. So I think there's value doing both. I think definitely just to get started, it's better to do just lots of different takes, just kind of let it happen, and then judge it afterwards.
Cool.
I think.
All right. Thank you very much for this, Dan. And thank you if you're still listening to this, which I guess you are if you're hearing my words now. If you have questions about anything we've said, or you have more, or it's brought up more questions or thoughts or anything, comments, love mail, hate mail, you can email me or Dan. So email me at daryl@guitartuitioneastlondon.co.uk, or send a message to Dan if you know what his email address to, which is dan@guitartuitioneastlondon.co.uk. Thanks very much for watching. We'll do, I think probably there's enough content for 2 more of these, unless people write in more questions. But thanks very much, guys. Cheers.